What's going on? Welcome into Empty the Notebook. It's the Week 14 version. Evan Washburn, always joined by Aditi Kinkhabwala. Great to be with you for another week. It's the show that takes you on the sidelines, into the production meetings, and Aditi, also into some of our travel, let's call them woes. I was in Arizona. You were in Tampa, but it sounds like we got home at the same time, around 1 a.m. What's going on here?
It is all the glamorous things, Evan. That's what it is. Unfortunately, in the beautiful city of Pittsburgh, which, P.S., it's only raining, not snowing this week, so that's nice.
Okay.
The beautiful city of Pittsburgh, there aren't as many direct flights as one would like. But I don't think that our listeners want to hear me whine about getting home at 1 a.m. So we'll just...
No, people love travel stories, and we've got plenty of them, but we also have plenty
Do you have a good one?
to get into.
How was Arizona to you? Did it treat you well?
Yeah, right? Yeah, it was a long trip. It was a long trip. So we're plowing through here on a Monday. But as is always the case, plenty of football stories to get into. But the nature of this show, Aditi, as you know, is to dive into our two games. You were in Tampa, as we touched on there, for a win, the Bucs over the Raiders. And I was out in Arizona, Cardinals, Seahawks, a battle for the top spot in the NFC West, at least heading into Week 15. And I know you had Seattle early in the year, so you'll be able to hop in here as well. But I was just so impressed by what they put on display in that game. It was a situation where the run game was vulnerable. No Kenneth Walker III. They're coming off 3 straight wins. Mike Macdonald had his kid early in the week, so he was away from the facility on Monday. It felt like when we met with them in our production meeting, Mike specifically, he was still chasing it a little bit, trying to get all his prep in. But Aditi, they had a complete game on both sides of the ball. They turned Kyler over twice, picks early that really set the tone. Geno took care of the ball. This is back-to-back weeks with no interceptions. And they ran the ball, something that they haven't been able to do all year. Zach Charbonnet steps in. Look, he's been part of the running game with Kenneth Walker, but he looked like an all-pro out there. So at the right time, this team that is a lot of moving pieces, first-year head coach, and Mike Macdonald seems to be one that's not just ready to win this division, but could compete in the NFC in the playoffs.
Evan, talk about growth. We had Seattle week 1, and I still remember Mike Macdonald looking at Adam Archuleta and me saying, like, you're parents, right? You have kids. And it still felt so far off that due date for his first child. But you know what? Week 1, we saw a great defense, and we knew that Mike Macdonald would have a great defense. It was that offense that we had some questions about. So remember in that game, actually, I don't know if you remember, but week 1, we saw multiple safeties in the first half. To hear that they are indeed getting better, that they are hitting their stride at the right time. I mean, frankly, kudos to Mike Macdonald figuring that out.
Yeah, and Aditi, the thing too, and we know this, especially with first-year head coaches, but especially the situation there in Seattle, I don't think this has gotten enough attention. The fact that he's a first-year head coach, but he's also working with so many coaches that he doesn't have a real background with. His offensive coordinator, and Ryan Grubb, comes from Washington, the college game. He loved what he did, and he obviously hired him, but it's not like they go back to the Ravens or the Michigan days. Same thing on the defensive side. So there's been a lot of learning on the fly, and I think it can't be overstated, too, what John Schneider, along with Mike Macdonald, has done to tweak this roster along the way. We saw it yesterday. Ernest Jones with the pick in the first half. He was with the Titans early in the year. They decided they had to revamp the linebacker position, and that's really paid dividends. And now the other side of it, too, Leonard Williams up front is playing at a Defensive Player of the Year rate right now the last few weeks. So this is a team, again, they've got a stretch here. They got the Packers on Sunday Night Football coming up. We're going to know a little bit more, but it was cool to witness a team that you kind of saw find themselves here on a big stage against a division opponent with, again, first place on the line.
Evan, can I add one more name too? And this is true Empty the Notebook fashion. This is a story I wanted to tell week 1, which I couldn't. The name is Leslie Frazier. How about kudos to Mike Macdonald bringing in a veteran former head coach, a guy that he once worked under. And when I said to him, why do you want him in the building? He said, because he knows what the blank is going on. He's seen it. So also, we've seen it with Antonio Pierce, who, of course, we had this weekend, bringing in former head coaches, bringing in those wise old heads, and not having such an ego that you can't use the people that have actually walked in those shoes. I'm a big fan.
No, it's a great point. We did shout out Leslie because he took over things on Monday, and he's been a huge resource to Mike. But you touched on it. You were down in Tampa, the Bucs doing their thing, kind of running that division right now and taking on what can be a frisky Raiders team. What stood out to you, Aditi, from what you witnessed and covered there in Tampa?
So big picture, yes. Look, the Bucs took over the division lead yesterday, paired with the Vikings loss, despite having basically two linebackers. I mean, I think at some point Todd Bowles was going to tap me and say, "Can you get in there?" They lost Antoine Winfield Jr. They lost. I'm built a little bit more like a safety. But anyway, Bucky Irving, who has been the outstanding rookie running back, he goes down in that game. But let me tell you, the story of the Bucs for me, and this is complete and total bias, but the story of the Bucs for me is Baker Mayfield. Evan, he is my spirit animal. Baker Mayfield's personality is so much mine. All of our best traits are our worst traits. What I mean by that is he constantly has a chip on his shoulder. He is constantly needing to prove himself to people. He is constantly taking things personally. He is so passionate. He is so intense. He is so competitive, and I texted you this earlier, but when you love him, you really, really love him. And he has found a home in Tampa. He is blossoming. He is finally secure in knowing that this team wants him, and that team rides his energy, his leadership, to see him feel so wanted and so appreciated. I mean, you've watched this too, Evan. I know that you've been on this journey with Baker Mayfield, just like I have the last 6-7 years. He is really bringing the best out of this team. And Evan, you and I have both seen this. Come on. Sometimes a quarterback needs to kind of hit bottom somewhere. We saw him talk about refinding his joy in those 5 weeks in LA, and now where he is. We're seeing it around the league, don't you think?
No, for sure. I mean, you got Sam Darnold in Minnesota, and the thing that I think about too with Baker and Tampa, it's the perfect marriage, because to all the things you're saying, they love him, they value him. He feels that now, so he's comfortable and he's playing at a high level. But everybody on the outside is doubting the Bucs. So all that doubt, that chip on the shoulder, he can find that at every turn and whoever else needs it. So it is the perfect marriage in so many ways, and one that you think can work moving forward. But look,
so here's
we hit
the big picture. Really quickly.
Now we really got to crack open the notebook and get into some things that we maybe couldn't get into the broadcast or maybe dive as deep on. And that's coming up next here on Empty the Notebook. Welcome back into Empty the Notebook, and now it's time for what this show was born with and by, if you will, Aditi, and that was the stories that just can't make their way onto a broadcast, because as we know, we're there to cover the game, but we get so much information in lead up to it, and sometimes you walk away going, man, I didn't get to tell that Maxx Crosby story or note, and now's your opportunity to do it. So what'd you learn about a guy who's basically become the face of the Raiders?
Well, that's exactly it, Evan. It's almost like you're living in my brain. It's about learning how to be the face of a team. So look, this Raiders team, they're 2-11. They've lost 9 in a row. But let me tell you, they fight and battle until the end. This is a team that does not give up, and kudos to them that they continue to play hard. They lost their second quarterback of the year yesterday. Devastating, but we'll see if they can close out this season with a few things to feel good about. Now, Maxx Crosby, we all know the freak that he is. I wish I could tell you, I think he's on a 7 straight game streak of never missing a defensive snap. I asked him, hey, Max, ever think about kind of tapping out a little bit? And Evan, he said to me, hell no, you know who I am. We know how unbelievable a player he is. We know what a game changer is. But Maxx Crosby, this tattooed Walter Payton Man of the Year candidate, is the face of the franchise. Usually it's a quarterback. For the Raiders, it is this player who embodies this team's toughness, this team's resilience. He is the face of the team. And Antonio Pierce talked to us at length about how the next thing that he needs from Max is to pull out more leadership, that it's not just enough to set this example of being the first one in, the last one out, taking care of your body the way that he does, being the most well-conditioned athlete in the NFL. It's not enough to be that. He wants Max to learn to say something too at certain points. And it's funny, Evan, you know this. We watch the sideline. We watch to see whether guys are riling up their teammates or not. I saw Mike Evans on the Bucs sideline yesterday throw his helmet and scream at the defense to try to get more out of them from that side. Max is still growing into that role of being the vocal leader who pushes his teammates to come ride with him. It's an interesting process to watch. I hope that we get to talk about his growth next year and we remember this conversation.
Yeah, Aditi, he reminds me a lot in a lot of ways in where he finds himself to JJ Watt and where he was with the Texans, where he was the face of that team, great leader, did everything right on and off the field in terms of getting his body right, and then obviously in the community as well. But he never had until there was moments they had success, but he didn't always have that quarterback with him, especially early in his career. And that's kind of where Maxx Crosby finds himself. So hopefully, whether it's through the draft, free agency here, because you need that on the other side of the ball. And I think that's going to be a big part of his story.
He was very, very honest with me. He said that this season he actually went to a dark, dark, dark place. That's a direct quote. And he doesn't want to play forever. He doesn't want to play for 15 years. He's got the Pro Bowls. He's got the All Pros. He said what he wants to do is win. And his exact quote again was, not making the playoffs is getting old. So this is how it's all tied together, right? He desperately wants to win. And Antonio Pierce is telling him, yes, you do need that high-level quarterback, but part of winning is you being more vocal, you being the leader of this club.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was Giselle. He can't do it all when she was talking about Tom Brady after the Super Bowl, and I think it plays here. He can yell and scream and throw helmets. That's not going to get them any more wins. So yesterday, a great example of the nature of this segment. We go into this game, and the Cardinals defense is playing lights out. They hadn't given up a touchdown at home since week 4. And everybody, myself included, had to be reminded, and I forget each time I do a Cardinals game, Jonathan Gannon, who was brought in off of the work he did as a defensive coordinator in Philly, doesn't call the defense in Arizona. Right. It's this young guy, Nick Rallis, 31 years old, former linebacker in Minnesota, and he's just risen up the ranks. And we come to understand just not that he can call a defense, but he is an absolute wizard at scheme, creating exotic looks, freeing players up to make plays because, Aditi, you've covered this team this year. Not a star-studded group. Yes, they have Budda Baker. Try and, as just a casual fan, name 3 other players that start defensively. But what part of the story we didn't get into is just how does Jonathan Gannon find out about Nick Rallis? Yes, he had him and hired him in Philadelphia when he was there as defensive coordinator, but it was one of the OGs, Mike Zimmer, who gave Jonathan Gannon the heads up about this kid, Nick Rallis. Because when Jonathan Gannon left Minnesota to go to Indy, spot opens up, Nick Rallis steps in as a quality control coach. He'd done 1 year at Wake Forest as a GA. And Mike Zimmer told Jonathan Gannon, I trust this guy more than anybody on my staff. He's in his mid-20s at this point. And so Jonathan Gannon goes to meet him at the Combine in 2019. They kind of keep up a relationship. Jonathan Gannon told us after his first meeting, he said, hey, teach me the 3-4. Gave him about an hour, came back, taught him the 3-4. He called his wife, JG did, and said, this guy's amazing. So eventually gets him in Philly. So it's always fun to get these origin stories of these coaches' connections. But the point outside of the Mike Zimmer connection, which Mike Zimmer giving praise, as Jonathan Gannon put it, isn't something he just dishes out. But I think it points to, and yesterday was a bad example of it, and that's why we didn't get to it. They gave up 30 in the loss. I think he's going to be a head coach pretty soon. It might not be this cycle, but the guy on the other sideline is a great example of it. Mike McDonald, 37, young guy, defensive guy. They don't have to be QB whispers. I think he, and based off of what we hear about his leadership, might be just tailor-made to be the next young head coach in this league on the defensive side of the ball.
And let's also make note of the fact that, as you said at the top, Jonathan Gannon was known for being that defensive coordinator, that defensive play caller in Philly. But he moves to Arizona and he says, you know what? I need to concentrate on the entire team. I need to build culture here. I need to establish the way we are going to look as a franchise. And he doesn't have such a big ego that he says, nope, I need to be the play caller myself. He feels strongly enough about his own ability that he can delegate to someone else. So that's also not something that we are seeing all over the league.
Yeah, the exact words, Aditi, from Jonathan Gannon when he was in his interview with Michael Bidwell and everybody there with the Cardinals was, if you're hiring me to call defensive plays, you need to hire somebody else because I'm bringing this kid or this person, Nick Rallis. He said that in the job interview, and obviously they trusted him, and it's worked out outside of yesterday. Hey, I'm getting my flag ready. We got to throw some here to close out the show. We'll be right back. Before we close out this week's episode of Empty the Notebook, we got to throw some flags or not throw some flags. That's how this goes. We'll each present a statement to one another. If we disagree with it, flag goes up in the air, flag on the field. If we agree with it, keep that flag in the pocket. So you're up first, and I'm going to present you with this statement, Aditi. Darren Rizzi, interim head coach of the New Orleans Saints, will be the permanent head coach down there in New Orleans at season's end.
All right, flags going in the pocket. At least that's what I think should happen. And not only because I've known Darren Rizzi for 20 years. Look at the job that he's doing down there. He's 3-1 as the interim head coach. Those guys are playing really, really hard. And this is a man who is trained for this position for, again, 20 years. I feel so strongly about special teams coordinators like our old friend John Harbaugh, like Bill Belichick, like Bill Cowher, like Mike Ditka, all who had training as special teams coordinators, that they are better equipped to be head coaches than just about anybody. Every time they're coaching on the field, Evan, they are talking to at least 22 players. They need to command the entire room. They have to always be high energy. Nobody on a staff knows time and situation and game management better than they do. No one has to adjust a roster. You lose a second string linebacker, they need to figure out who's suddenly on the punt coverage team. I am so bullish on this. Darren Rizzi for head coach, full-time, get rid of the interim title.
Couldn't agree with you more. Special teams coordinators, the character traits really translate to head coach. I would argue more than defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator in that whole play caller boom that we have right now. All right, what do you got for me?
All right, for you, despite the loss yesterday, Josh Allen has absolutely wrapped up the MVP trophy.
Did Josh Allen do anything yesterday? I didn't hear about it. Do I need to throw the flag? Absolutely not. I'm not throwing the flag. It's going right back in the pocket. This is a clean game so far. Aditi, book it. Josh Allen is your MVP. I know we still got 4 games to play or 5. I don't know. I'm all confused on weeks at this point. But he has not only played well enough, his team's playing well enough. Yes, they drop a game. What he's done this season, in my opinion, has been not just the best of his career, but has been the best in the NFL. Yes, Lamar Jackson has had his moments. Jared Goff's had his moments. I know Saquon's in the mix. But he did something yesterday that's never been done in the NFL. I mean, we've been doing this for a minute. 3 touchdowns through the air, 3 on the ground. Josh Allen is your 2024 season MVP. That sit well with you? You good with that?
I'm so good with that. And you know what? My son is wearing a Josh Allen jersey to school today. He is his favorite player. He is a diehard Bills fan. So, there you go. And again,
your pregnant pause made me think you were going to disagree. So I'm glad we don't have to end on a tough note. All right.
No, I just was there was nothing really there to add.
The Chiefs' luck, and you can call it luck, you can call ability to finish games and execution, all those things, but man, it's starting to feel a little wacky and lucky down the stretch. It will run out before they're to make it back to a Super Bowl.
I don't know what to do with this one. This one may require we play assist from the booth. Here's the thing, Evan, on this. I think that a team like the Chiefs expects to win. I think that a team like the Chiefs is so good that it makes its luck, that it finds a way. You need a third different kicker to kick you a game winner? Sure, why not? It's the Chiefs. I also feel a little bit of personal fear in going against the Chiefs because I went against the Chiefs twice last year and was proven wrong. I thought the Bills would take them out. I thought the Ravens would take them out. And the lesson that I took from that is don't ever bet against the Chiefs. I also think, point number 3, that it's good to be tested, that it's good to have to gut out wins. You know, I remember a few years ago when the Ravens were 14-2 and then lost a first-round playoff game to the Titans. They just romped all over everybody. But at the same time, Evan, at some point, you'd like to see them run over everybody and say, okay, they can also win that way. I don't know what to do. I can't throw the flag because I just can't.
Don't throw the flag. Don't do it. Don't do it. They'll come back. They're Freddy Krueger. They'll come back to haunt you for the rest of your days until they go down in a AFC Championship game, which we have seen. Obviously, the Bengals or Super Bowl, which you saw against the Bucs. We got to keep the flags in the pocket. All right, we got time for one more. What do you got for me?
All right, last one, super quick. Rams are getting hot. The Rams are getting hot at the right time and are therefore very dangerous.
They are dangerous, and they're not going to get got either, Aditi. This team is making a run. It's going to be Seattle and the Rams in Week 18 for that division. I'm seeing that happen right now. Sean McVay, he's got that special sauce, and this team's got some experience, and they got a guy, Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua, that can do it. So I got them not just hot, but not getting got, and they're going to be battling with Seattle down the stretch.
Nacua is something else. I will tell you that.
Yeah, you can see Aditi in Denver for Colts Broncos. I've got Chiefs Browns. Thanks for watching. If you missed any of this, head to the YouTube channel, NFL on CBS. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on Empty the Notebook.
Bye, everyone.